Hello, good afternoon, everybody. And thank you for attending the COVID-19 information policy session. Can everyone see the presentation? Thumbs up, perfect. Thank you so much. So my name is Laura Clark, and I'm the District Director of Academic Systems and Student Records. Joining me today is Richard Hayes, District Director of Student Financial Aid, Dr. Stephanie Craw, Associate Vice Chancellor of Advising and Student Services, and Dr. Megan Bernard, District Director of Retention and Student Success. So in today's session, we will discuss the approved policy changes from the April 2020 board meeting due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We will also record this session, and it will be posted online at ccc.edu/coronavirus. So the three policy changes that we'll focus on today are the no credit NC option, no cost retake classes, and the COVIDI or COVID incomplete process. So for each policy, I'll explain the policy, how you can qualify for the policy, how and if you need to apply or opt in to be eligible, what is the deadline, and any other information that may be helpful in understanding how the policy works. So as we go through each of the policies, if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat, and Dr. Craw and Bernard will bring them up, and we are going to try to answer all the questions that we can during this session. So if there are any questions that are not addressed, we will follow up. And also Director Hayes will be here to share additional information regarding potential changes to, or changes for financial aid based on the policies that have been updated. Okay, so let's start with the no credit NC designation. So the policy is that for spring 2020 courses, except for those in the first 8-week session, students may elect for a grade to convert to NC or no credit in the event that the grade earned is a D or F. So what that means is that a subsequent final grade of D or F will convert to NC, and a subsequent final grade of C or higher will stand as the letter grade. And once the final grade is posted, the grade cannot be changed. So how do you qualify for this policy or this process? So you can opt in for spring 2020 classes, except for those in the first 8-week session, or if a final grade has been posted. How do you apply or opt in? So it's really important to note that you do opt in for this. So in order to do that, you'll log into my.ccc.edu and go to the academic records tile. And then you'll click on the no credit designation for spring. So students can select one or all of the classes that they would like to opt into. It's your choice for how many you would like to have this option for, and then just save it. So what's the deadline for this? So the deadline is that it must be opted in before the end of the term for any of the classes, or if a final grade has been posted, then the grade cannot be changed to no credit. So it's really important to make sure you're going in right now if you want to have that option for no credit. And then, so if you opt in for no credit, does that mean that all of your classes will change to an NC? No, not necessarily. So only classes with a D or F grade will actually change to no credit. So again, if you earn an A, B, or C and opt for no credit, your grade will still remain as an A, B, or C. And so another question is, does this count against your PACE or your GPA? No, so the NC option does not count against your GPA. It also doesn't count against your PACE percentage, so that passing percentage for financial aid. So I'll stop right there for a second. And are there any questions regarding the no credit option? Okay, Stephanie, no questions right now?
I just had one come in.
Okay.
does it count towards time frame?
It does count towards your max time frame. That's a great question. So that is one thing that you would have to appeal with the financial aid office, that the no credit would count towards that.
Okay, another question. My class is a lab class that will continue when we return to face-to-face instruction. That means that all my students will receive an I designation. My grades are due to be submitted tomorrow, April 28th. This gives one day for my student to sign up for the NC option. If I enter all students in as an I, will they still be able to sign up for the NC designation up to the May deadline? Then once final grades are in, convert a failing grade to NC.
So great question. So students will still have until May 9th for any class. It does not matter if you're posting your grades right now, if the final grades have not already been posted. So students can still make that change. We aren't posting actual final grades until the end of the term, which it will be, the term ends May 9th, and then grades won't be posted till May 18th. So they have until May 9th to make that change. If they are receiving an incomplete, their grade right now would remain as an incomplete. So once that converts to an actual grade, and if they opted for the NC and earned a D or F, then that would be when it switches. So an incomplete will still show as an incomplete right now. And students still have that option and they still have time.
Okay, I have another question. Dual credit classes will end on May 29th. Is May 9th the deadline for them too?
No, that's a great question. So there's a very small handful of classes that end after May 9th. Those classes will still have the option to change to no credit until their class actually ends.
Okay. What about students who drop the class by the drop date of April 16th, but would like this option instead?
Unfortunately, that is not an option anymore because the class has been withdrawn.
Okay, we're asking if you have a question, if you can type your question in the chat box, just to keep the flow of everything. We won't be unmuting individuals right now. So if you have a question, please type it in the chat box. Thank you. Laura, that's all the questions right now, but I believe I may have another one coming in. It's just not in yet.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And we can go next to the no cost retake. And I think that some of them, the policies do tie together. So that would be, we will go back to questions in just a couple minutes. Okay, so let's talk about the no cost retake. So what is this policy? So students who actively pursue their coursework through May 16th and received a final grade of NC, so no credit designation, or received an ADW on or after March 16th, will have the opportunity to retake their course in its entirety at no cost in the next academic year. Something to note about this though, the last credit hours and grade earned, even if the last grade is not the highest grade earned for the course, is used to calculate into the student's GPA. So how do you qualify for this? So if a student earned a grade in any class except for in the first 8 weeks, withdrew or received an ADW on or after March 16th, or received no credit in their class, they're eligible. So for one free retake per class. So many of the classes, especially if they are completing it right now, you are eligible for that no cost retake. And so how do you apply or opt in? You actually don't need to apply or opt in. This will be automatically qualified for the group that I mentioned. And so the tuition charges will reflect that. So if a student is registered for 12 credit hours and 3 are part of the no cost retake, then only 9 of those hours will be charged for them for tuition. But if you're not sure if your course counts as a no cost retake, or you're not sure if you're being charged correctly, please talk to your advisor and they can look at that. And so what is the deadline for this? So the deadline is that you have one year to retake these classes for free. So you can take them in summer of 2020, fall of 2020, or spring of 2021, and you will not be charged. Now, you can also retake them throughout the time. So if you have 4 classes that qualify for the no cost retake, you can spread those out, and that is absolutely fine. So you could take 1 in the summer, 2 in the fall, and 1 in the spring, and all will still be removed from your tuition charges. But it's really important to know, so if you drop your class, during the term, can you still get another free retake? Unfortunately, no. So if you drop the class after the session has begun, or receive an ADW or an NSW, you are not eligible for another free retake, and that class would have counted as your free retake. But also please note, so if a student receives an NSW in the free retake class, they are still financially responsible for that NSW, the $200 NSW fee. So I'll stop there. Are there more questions?
Yes, ma'am, there are.
Great.
I think I'm going to ask a clarifying question for the professor that asked about the incomplete course and the no credit, that tie-in.
Okay.
So just to clarify, the I is not a final grade and will not be locked in until May, even if I enter it now.
Correct.
Okay. There was a student that asked about the COVIDI, but I'll wait to ask that question when we get to that. Is the no cost retake available to dual credit students as well?
Yes, that's a great question. So dual credit is not, the classes are already free, and there is a policy about that. So I'll mention that a little bit later too. But basically, if there is a drop or a retake, you're still eligible to stay in the dual credit program and still repeat your class.
Okay. Are certificate program classes such as EMT 101 included in this NC option?
In the no credit option or the
Yes.
no cost?
Ooh, good question. I'm going to say they meant no credit option.
So as long as the course wasn't taken in the first 8 weeks, or a final grade has not already been posted, then yes.
Okay, and then they would be available. They would be able to have the no cost retake as well in that.
Yes, really the same criteria, or very similar criteria.
Okay. And the other question, I'm sorry, the questions are coming in and we're moving through.
Right.
So the question is, are students able to take the no cost retake if they drop the class on April 23rd?
Oh, yes, yes. If you drop the class basically on or after March 16th, anytime after that date, then you are eligible for a no cost retake. Yes.
Okay. Okay, I think those are all the questions right now that are applicable to the things. Like I said, we have a couple COVIDI questions that we can answer then.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, then let's get to the COVIDI. So the COVIDI or COVID incomplete, what is the policy? So COVIDI incomplete designations are intended for students who actively pursued their spring 2020 courses through March 16th of 2020 or beyond during the COVID-19 pandemic, and courses included in the spring 2020 COVID policies appendix. So how do you qualify for this, or how? Basically, you must have been enrolled in one of the classes listed in the appendix of the policy manual. So it's a very specific list of courses that would qualify for this, and you would request the COVIDI from your instructor. And really, it's mostly courses that had gone on a pause break. And so how do you apply or opt in? So talk to your instructor to decide if that is the best option for you, and your instructor will assign an incomplete during the final grade post period. You'll then work with your instructor to complete the missing assignments and designate, the instructors will designate a time for when that's due. What is the deadline? So that COVIDI must be requested prior to the end of the semester before the final grades are entered from your instructor. And will the incomplete turn into a final grade? So yes, so if your instructor does not make a grade change sooner, then the incomplete will turn to a final grade by midterm of the fall 2020 semester. So there is time, and that is, again, a conversation with each instructor as to the timing and when everything will be complete for that. But one thing to note, so the next question is about if I request an incomplete, am I eligible for a no-cost retake? So you're only eligible for a no-cost retake once the final grade has been posted. So if the student decides to retake the class, then they must earn a final grade first before registering and qualifying for that free retake there. So that's important to keep in mind, that maybe if a student wants to just earn the grade there, then they can choose to do that as well. Or also, as it was mentioned in the question, take the no credit option and repeat it at a later time. And one thing I do want to note, the COVID incomplete is, the procedures are very similar to the general incomplete policies, with the exception of these are for very specific courses because of the time of when they had to stop during the term. But students are still eligible to request incompletes in other classes as well. That our policy for that did not change. So any questions? I think Stephanie, you said there were a few.
Yes, there are.
Great.
Okay, so the first question was, I sent my professor an email and asked for a COVID-19 I just for an extension until the end of May or by the end of summer to get the rest of my assignment done. I don't want to take the class over. Is there something that we should encourage students to do in that particular case if they want to request a COVIDI?
Sure. So I think that it's important to just kind of understand the distinction. So the COVIDI is for very specific classes, but the incomplete process is still the same. So you might not be specifically needing a COVIDI. I don't know what class this is exactly, but it might be that you're just requesting an incomplete from your instructor. And so that is definitely a conversation between you and the instructor will make the determination if an incomplete is the right method for your class or for you in that class. So reaching out to your instructor is absolutely the right way to go.
Okay, the next question is, I withdrew on March 25th and didn't receive an ADW, but instead withdrew and received a W-2 as a grade?
Yes, so that's a student initiated withdrawal. So that absolutely counts for the no cost retake.
Okay. Sorry, I'm scrolling down. And Laura, can you just once again restate about if a student dropped the class during the withdrawal period, what their option would be at this time? So if they dropped before April 23rd or on April 23rd, what would be an option for them at this time regarding the pieces that you've discussed so far?
Sure. So if you already dropped your class, so the best option then at this point would be you can repeat the class at no cost, and you can do that within the next 3 semesters. So the repeat can happen in summer, in fall, or in spring of 2021. And all you have to do is register for that class, and it will reflect appropriately for tuition. So if that's the only class you're in, then you should not see any tuition charges.
Okay, this is a question from a faculty member. When entering a COVIDI, do I just use the I designation in the grading portal?
Yes, yes.
Okay. If the student will get a COVIDI and then the student does not submit work after 2 terms, not including summer, will it turn into an F And then will the student have the NC option if they opt in?
So what'll happen is you'll still, when instructors are submitting their grades, for an incomplete, you're also adding a supplemental grade. So you'll still do that. So if no other work is completed, what would their grade have been right now? So you do that at input that in right now, and then if nothing else is done, the grade, it won't be two big terms, it will be just the next big term, so midterm of fall semester. That grade will convert to whatever the final grade should be at that time that you've added as that supplemental grade. If the student did opt for an NC right now, and that grade is truly a D or an F, then once that final grade rolls during the fall semester, midterm of fall, it will roll to the NC automatically.
Okay. Another question, what if classes don't resume this fall, but classes start in spring 2021? Will the academic year extend to fall 2021? So I guess they're more so asking about probably about their course being off. I'm going to expound upon it. Like if their course maybe is not offered in the fall, because courses are currently occurring remotely. So I think that's one clarity for the student that may be asking this question. Classes are currently occurring remotely for summer. And so the question may be more so about fall and being able to retake their class during that time.
Okay, so maybe a concern about what if it's not offered during that time?
I would answer it more in that way, because based on how the question is asked, is about if classes don't resume, but classes are currently occurring.
Sure. So, as of right now, we have to go with what our policy is. So that would still be, you have until the spring of 2021 to retake that class for free.
Okay. This is my last semester. I would have been graduating May 2nd, but my semester is saying it ends the 9th. And some say it ends the 11th. I don't know when the final grades will be submitted for the graduates. I have 4 classes I know I will pass, 3 classes I'm on the edge with, the last one not sure if I will pass or not. So is it best to sign up for this NC? If it is passed, it will remain passed, but if it fails, then I'll be able to do it at no cost retake, correct?
Yes, so a lot there in that question. That was a great question. So the term ends May 9th officially, and final grades will post May 18th. If you are not sure and want to make sure that you don't want to have a D or F on your transcript, absolutely you can opt for the no credit option. So that would not count against your GPA for that, and then can retake it later for free. If you're graduating, so a D grade does count towards the elective category in general electives. So that is something important to note if that was a consideration there. If it's a gen ed, an A, B, or C absolutely has to be earned for that. So I do recommend in this case, you asked some great questions, and I think it's really important to talk to your college advisor about that specifically and your situation, just because there's a lot going on there. And so you want to know what the best option is for you, and based on like your degree audit.
Okay, a question came in. How many classes can a student retake?
For free? Do we think?
I think that they're asking more so that was just, yes.
So as I mentioned, so the no cost retake is for all classes that qualify for it. So basically any class that, you earned a final grade except in the first 8 weeks, withdrew on or after March 16th, or received an ADW or an NC after that time. So you get 1 time per class. So it's however many classes are during that time.
Okay. A question came, will the W-2 count against PACE?
Yes, so that's a withdrawal. Yes.
Okay.
And I can we can go to the next slide. So there's some additional information. I think because I feel like we have definitely a lot of other questions, and there's some financial aid questions in there, and so maybe we want to ask those. Can we pause? Is that all right, Stephanie?
Sure. I'm going through and making sure there's some that I can possibly answer as well. So go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. So now, Director Hayes, were you able to join?
Yes, I am. I'm here.
All right. Wonderful. So I will have him discuss our financial aid presentations regarding these policies.
So, really quick, a couple of financial aid considerations as it relates to the non-credit designation. So non-credit is a non-grade designation. So one, that designation will not count against PACE or GPA, all right? But it will count against time frame because it's an attempted credit, attempted class, so it still will count against the time frame. So when we're looking at students, say I'm gonna throw out a quick scenario, you got a student out there that NC all their classes at the end of term, their PACE and their GPA will be fine, but that's still an attempted class. So if that student falls into a SAP hole because of time frame, then they'll still have to go through the process of mitigating the credits that are outside of that spring 20 calculation. Time frame can be a little bit tricky, so we look at it from a case by case basis as it relates to time frame. Now, if it's just PACE or GPA, that student will be fine, and for the most part, they can get through that SAP process pretty easily. If you have a student who is on a SAP probation right now and they NC all their credits because they're on the SAP probation, that student would need to do a appeal because they was already on probation and they NC'd all their courses. That's only for those students that NC their courses, all right? Another thing you want to consider is the no-cost retake. Since this class is being covered by the college and by the institution, this class will not count towards FA load. That means, like in the example, if a student's taking 12 credit hours, but 3 credit hours is a no-cost retake, that means that they will only get financial aid for the 9 credit hours, which is 3/4 time, as opposed to financial aid for a full-time student. So that's one thing we really want to consider. This is especially important if a student decides to take a loan. And the reason I say that is you have to take at least 6 credit hours to be eligible to take out a direct loan. Say the student only takes 2 classes, but one of those classes is a no-cost retake. That means only 3 credits is going towards the FA load. That means that student wouldn't be eligible for a loan unless they have 6 credit hours going towards their load. All right, so you want to make sure that you pay attention to that when helping students get through their classes. Similar to the incomplete, the COVIDI will count against your SAP calculation until the final grade is posted. So it's an incomplete still, and it will count against the final grade. So depending on whatever that final grade is, that could affect the SAP calculation. So we want to just pay attention to that. Anybody that has an I or a COVIDI on their account. All right. And that's about it as far as non-credit. We did send out the SAP protocols to all enrollment leaders as well as all the FA team. The advising team also has that as well. And so if you have additional questions about that, I can definitely answer those.
And so are there any questions that have come on the chat about financial aid and these policies?
Okay. Not specifically about financial aid. Well, actually, there was a particular question about financial aid, and so I'm going to connect when the person asked the question and what else that they were asking at the time. I'll ask this in a way for Richard maybe to answer this. So would COVIDI affect that? Because I think that Laura spoke to whether or not the PACE and everything for no credit. And if you could speak about withdrawal in the COVIDI, how they may impact SAP at all.
So withdrawal is a grade distinction. So if it's a W-2, if it's a WTA, if it's an ADW, those absolutely affect that. If it's a grade, F through A, those absolutely affect SAT. So if a student withdrew already before they can even take the non-credit, then that will go against their SAT calculation. The COVIDI, those work the same way our incompletes work from a SAT standpoint. Because it's an incomplete, the SAT calculation is going to stay within a, let me rewind. If the student is already within a SAT probation, I'll go down to different classifications really quick. If they're already in the probation and have an I, then they're going to end up staying within SAP hold until we can determine what that I will be. That's the same way we would do if they had a regular incomplete. We have to see what that I turns into to be able to pull them out of that particular status. If the student is on, say, SAP warning, getting ready to go into a hold, the same thing, we have to wait for that I to change to an actual grade distinction or non-grade distinction so we can determine what the SAP calculation will be. So either they will stay in the SAP hold or SAP warning, but the thing is, let's say, for example, in the SAP warning, and then go ahead and you package a student, you still run the risk of that package changing after we get that new grade. So to err out of caution, we won't package that student until we know what that I turns into. That's why sometimes you'll see students want to pressure the faculty to try to change that grade as soon as they submit all the information. And so, because the I takes so long to change to a grade, we run into that catch-22 for a lot of students who fall into that particular designation.
Okay, thank you. Another question that came in. Sorry, I'm scrolling down. Okay, a question came in about if a student receives a B or a C grade in their course. Sorry, yes. If the student earns a B or a C, can they still repeat the course at no cost?
Yes, they can.
Okay. Sorry, scrolling down.
But it's important to know that the newest grade is what will count towards their GPA. So if you earned a B now and then wanted to retake it and got a C, the C is what will count towards the GPA.
And this, Rich, this is for you. If a warning or probation student withdrew, so this is in SAT context. I know that we have an audience, so I'm trying to ask these questions as simple as possible. Everyone's variations and knowledge on various things. If a student has a SAT warning or probation and they withdrew, will they have to appeal?
Yes, they will, because the withdrawal will go against the SAT calculation. Now, what we are doing to help those students out, it depends on when they withdrew. Now, I know that the March 16th was the actual date that was kind of put in place as the date that we're kind of looking at. We went back a little bit further to help the student out. So if a student withdraws after March 1st and going forward, then that student can use the COVID-19 special circumstance without submitting any documentation for that in their SAP appeal. But if they withdrew before March 1st, then they wouldn't be able to use the COVID-19. They would have to come up with a mitigating circumstance as well as a supporting documentation.
Okay. So early college students need to sign up for the NC consideration to be able to take, so no credit consideration, to be able to retake the class 2. Is that correct, Laura?
No, early college qualifies the same way that all other students qualify for the free retake option. So if they earned a grade this semester or withdrew, received an AW on or after March 16th, or took an NC. So any of those options count, and early college will be able to use that. And that is something actually on this slide that I added. So for the early college student policy update, that is, they're eligible for the same things and will not have early college eligibility revoked if a D or F grade is earned, an NC designation is assigned, or withdraws or receives an ADW on or after March 16th. So that's the biggest difference for the early college students, is that they still will be eligible for those free classes.
So they won't have to go into the system and designate their class as NC, like as a no credit.
Oh, I'm sorry, no, yes, they will. If a student, any student who wants an NC option now does have to go in and do that. So otherwise the grade will stand as what is earned.
Okay. So Clarity, I have another student, and this is more so a statement versus a question. Well, no, it is a question. For credit classes, you have to pass with an A, B, or C, but elective classes, you can pass with a D.
Yes, yes. So for Gen Eds, you have to have a C or higher in order to that, in order for that to apply towards your general education requirements. Most electives, unless most elective or for elective classes, you can have a D in the elective, and that applies.
Okay. Is the NC grade going to, the no credit grade, going to show on the student's official transcripts?
Yes, so it is it's not actually, we don't are considering it a grade, it's a designation. So it's changed to NC, but yes, it will appear on the transcript.
Okay. Okay, a question from a faculty member. Should I enter a failing grade for a student that has no chance of passing the class now so that they can register for the class in the upcoming semester?
So the final grade will not be posted until May 18th. So even if you enter final grades now or in a week, they still do not actually post until that time. And we, one, do that for a couple of reasons. If the final grades are not due until, final grades aren't due until the 13th, but also students still do need that option to be able to select it. So like if they wanted to do the NC, they have until the 9th to do that, but they won't see that actual final grade until the 18th.
Okay. Another question. I have a W1, and I guess that's a withdrawal option. W1, can I retake at no cost?
So the withdrawal, it's really about the date of that withdrawal. So if it was on or after March 16th, then yes. And if you're not sure if the date's around there, please check with your advisor and they can look for you.
Okay. Another clarity about COVIDI. COVIDI is just an incomplete grade, not an extension of the current course. A person will have to retake. Oh, will the person have to take the class all over?
So no, so the COVIDI is an extension of the course they are in on pause. And it's a very, like I said, it's still the specific courses that are in the appendix of the policy manual. And that is, and also how that structure is going to happen for the courses that are qualified for that is up to the instructor for that. So it's really important to talk to your instructor about what that will look like. Okay. And if it's an instructor, talk to, if you're not sure, talk to your instruction team.
So if you have an early college student who graduates from high school, can they retake the class for free as a degree-seeking student?
Yes, absolutely. Within the same three semesters, absolutely.
Okay. If I get a D and choose it to be a no credit, do I have to take the class again?
No, that is absolutely your choice. So that is something, if you wanted to talk about with your advisor, that's a great idea. Otherwise, if you don't need it to go towards graduation, then you don't have to retake it again. Absolutely your choice.
Okay. Due to COVID, I have not attended class for a while. That being the case, I asked for an incomplete. Is this a scenario where I should apply for NC for the no credit?
So you can absolutely still apply for the NC, and then if the instructor chooses to give an incomplete, you have that option as well. They an incomplete, if you do get an incomplete, it'll stay as an incomplete until that final grade is entered. And if it's a D or F, if you opted for that NC, then it'll turn to the NC. But if you are just want to retake the class, then you can choose to opt for the NC now as well. And once that final grade's post, re-register.
Okay. I'm just scrolling again to make sure I didn't miss any questions. Okay, one just came in. If a student needs a C or higher to move to the next class, then they will probably need to retake before they move along. And the student should talk with their advisor. Sorry, that's a statement.
Yeah, so a C or higher, if you need a C or higher, you have to still earn a C or higher to be able to move on. You can still, like we said, retake the class for free if you need to, but absolutely the same prerequisite requirements for each class are still absolutely in place.
Okay, Laura, I think because of a question that just came in from a student, can you kind of share the sequence of what happened? So I think that there could be confusion about earning a grade for a course, like when professors put in grades and grades not showing up, and then the designation. I think that folks need clarity on putting in the designation versus when the grade is earned.
Sure, yes. So kind of time frame starting like from today, students can and should go in if they would like the NC option. So go into your portal as a student and choose any classes that you would like to have the potential for an NC. You'll go to your portal and then academic records and select any or all classes for the NC. And that won't change until the final grading has been posted. That during this time as well and through really after the term ends, instructors are entering final grades into the system. They don't see if you opted for an NC or not, they're just entering the grade that was earned. And then once final grades post, so that will be May 18th. So you'll see all final grades posted on May 18th. So if a grade of D or F was earned, at that time, you would see that reflected in your portal as an NC if you opted for that option. But if a grade of A, B, or C was earned, then you'll still see that grade of A, B, or C, even if you opted for the NC option. But the important part of the time frame right now is that if you are interested in the no credit option, you have to opt into it. And that's happening now through the end of the term. So through May 9th is that time frame for that. And during that time, instructors are entering grades and a little bit past it, but you won't see that final grade until May 18th.
Okay. When you go for the no credit, do you have to retake the exact class you fail?
No, so no credit, what it does is it basically just changes your class to the designation to no credit. So you're not earning a grade for it. It's just showing that there was no credit earned. Basically kind of saying it was completed, but there was no credit. So it does not go through the same repeat rules as if you earned a grade of a D in it. So it's up to you if you want to repeat that class or not. But you can at no cost. So that's kind of the point of it, but that's always your choice. If you needed it for to complete your program requirements, then yes, you would have to repeat the same class, but that's very maybe program specific. And always talk to your advisor about it too, if you're not sure.
And so just for clarity as well, if you're wanting to have the no cost retake, you have to retake that class. So for instance,
Yes.
English 101, I took no credit. I have to enroll in English 101 like as a retake to get the no cost. So I can't do English 102 and get that for the no cost.
Correct. Yes. Thank you for clarifying. Yes, it is only classes that were taken during this spring term under the specific criteria. So it's not moving to the next level to get the next one for free. It has to be one of these if you would like that option.
Is an incomplete still an option if I opt for no credit?
Yes, it is. An incomplete will stay as an incomplete until that final grade has been posted. So that happens in two ways. If you have worked out with your instructor that you're going to complete the work in the summer, and then you submit it and a final grade is posted in the summer, then if it's a grade of a D, for example, but you had opted for no credit, that grade then will turn to no credit at that time. But otherwise, a final grade for an incomplete will roll over in the midterm of the fall. So you won't see a true grade until that time. And if an NC was opted for and a D or F was earned, you'll see the NC at that time, but not until then.
Okay. Okay. Just to change it to no credit, how many days until it's posted by the college? And I believe the question is more so, and please clarify if I'm not understanding your question, that the moment that a student goes in and initiates the NC, will that won't show up until after grades are posted if a D or F is given for the class. So the student will go in, make the NC designation for a course, but they won't actually see it NC until after grades are posted, correct?
Yes, that is absolutely correct. So an NC will automatically be on the, will save, so we know that you opted for that designation, but it will not actually show on your history for the final grade until after final grades post May 18th, and only if a grade of a D or F is earned.
Okay. Is a C grade required, sorry, is a C grade required to pass an English class?
Yes, English 101 and 102, absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
And I'll clarify, so if any, and it's really, and I'll say English 101 always, because that's required for, well, it's required for our degrees. If it's English 102 and it's not required, it'll go towards, it can count towards electives. So if that were a D, then it could be an elective if it's not required for that degree or to go to the next level course. That's always, a C is required for anything to move on or to count towards gen eds.
Okay. I'm just scrolling back up to make sure I didn't miss any questions. Oh, the question about where the Zoom recording will be posted.
Sure. So it's going to be on, we have there's been in the CCC website, a coronavirus page or site created. So we will post it in there. I can't tell you exactly where it'll be in there. I apologize, but we will post it on that site.
Okay. So I would just repeat the answer to this question about instructors. Oh, I don't think this question was asked. Would instructors be able to see if a student signs up for the NC grade, the no credit option or not?
No, an instructor will not see that.
Okay. Trying to scroll up. Okay. Can W-2 and NC be treated the same for COVID-19? One negatively penalizing the student, W-2, and the other one doesn't, NC, as it relates to SAP. So Rich, can you clarify the impact again about SAP and the W-2 versus NC?
Yes, the W-2 will go against the SAP because it is a great distinction within our system. So if a student actually did a self-initiated withdrawal, it will go against their SAP GPA, PACE, and time frame. The NC only goes against time frame because it's an attempted course. So those are the two distinctions there. NC only goes against time frame, not PACE or GPA, but the WTH, ATW, W2, all those particular grade distinctions will go against PACE, GPA, and time frame.
Laura, I don't have any more questions that have come in.
Okay, okay, great. So just a couple other things here, just as additional information to consider, that if you're interested in the no cost retake, that you have to have withdrawn or received a final grade before actually registering for that class and it applying towards or basically removing the cost from your tuition. So that's just important thing to note. That if you're going to retake that class, but you're waiting for that final grade to come in, that tuition won't be removed until that final grade is in and you've re-registered for the class for the new semester. And then also considerations about always about, are you planning to receive a degree or certificate this semester? What's the best options for you to take your grades as is? If you're not sure, talk to your instructor about what that might be, or to go opt for the no credit. Do you need specific courses for your degree or certificate? So like I mentioned, talk to your instructor, but also talk to your advisor about those options. And then again, who can help me if I have questions after this? I keep saying it, but it's really, really important to stay connected to your advisors, as well as you can always do chat at the virtual student services site. You can do live chats there. So if you have other questions, please reach out to them or reach out to us and we're happy to answer them. And I think that that's really it. So if there's anything else that comes in, please feel free to ask. We've got a couple more minutes. Happy to hang around.
Laura, the question that came in is does no credit go against time frame for dual credit students?
Yes, it qualifies the same for all students.
Okay. And then Rich, what about W-1? Does W-1, how does that impact financial aid and SAP?
W-1, help me out here. W-1, Laura, refers to,
it's a withdrawal. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's still.
Yeah. And it affects the same way W-2 will. You know, W-1 will affect it the same way. So it'll go against all three, which is PACE, GPA, and time frame.
Yeah, any withdrawal after the start of the semester would be counted there after that refund date.
Okay. Okay, if a student withdrew from class after the 16th and they have registered for summer or fall to retake the same class, the student can the student set up a payment plan to hold the class? I think.
So let me make sure I'm understanding. So the student withdrew already and has re-registered for the class, correct?
Yes.
And then, so as long as and the class was withdrawn after March 16th?
Yes.
So they wouldn't need to set up a payment plan. The tuition would be, as long as that's the only class they're registering for. If all their classes are for part of the free retake, then that will be reflected and that will hold them into their classes. The system does see it.
So, okay. I'm sorry, I'm trying to make sure I follow this person's question. So I think they're asking, I'm sorry, can you clarify your question? The person just asked a question about the withdrawal after the 16th. That the question is, so no need to wait until end of term. If you can clarify what aspect you're talking about. So as Laura mentioned, if the student has only registered for the no credit course and they're doing the no cost retake, then they don't have to set up a payment plan if that's the only course that they're enrolled in. So there would not be any sort of refund or anything triggered because they didn't pay anything. So, okay. So the student can register now and have PDS on the account now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, if they had dropped the class, yes.
Okay. Students are anxious and stressed about their grades. Do you recommend students apply for the no credit option regardless of grade they may earn?
I mean, like I said, it definitely doesn't hurt a student for no credit, just in terms of that if they still earn an A, B, or C, they will still get that A, B, or C, even if they opted in. If the D is the only question, if they just need it for an elective, that's a different, they should have a conversation about their advisor, but otherwise, yes, absolutely consider the no credit option. And just as a reminder, again, it's open now, so students can absolutely go into their portals and opt for no credit, and it'll be open through May 9th. And as the question asked, if there's a class that ends after that date, students who have a class that has ended after still have a little bit more time.
So just to clarify a question that just came in, for students, when you enter at May 9th, the no credit option, there's nothing else that you need to do. Your faculty will then enter the grade grades will show up by May 18th. And if you put the no credit option, depending on your grade, that will be if it stays no credit or if it stays the letter grade. Because the question,
yes.
Yeah, so.
Yes.
Okay. So there's a question about, did all students receive this email?
Yes, so this was sent, you mean the email about the policy changes or about this session?
I think it could be both. I would say answer both. Okay,
yes. So yes to both. That there were special announcements sent out to everybody regarding the policy changes, as well as the special announcement that went out today regarding this session went to all students, faculty, and staff.
Okay. If I wait until May 9th when the final grades are in and I receive a C, on my transcript, it'll show that I took the class twice. Is the no credit better?
So I'm not quite clear on the question. So final grades, if you opt for no credit and receive a C, on May 18th is when your grades will post. So you will see a C and that's all. You won't see the no credit. So basically that's there as an option if the D or F were earned, but no, you would just see the C there. If you retook the class, if you received a no credit this term and retook the class in the fall, for example, you would see the no credit grade, the no credit designation would show for the class you retook. If it was, let's say if it was Humanities 143, for the spring term, and then you would see the grade that you earned in the fall term for that same Hume 143 class. So they both are listed on your transcript, if that's the question.
Okay. So to clarify, the drop clock is not going to drop students out of classes with the NC designation, only NC classes that came, I'm sorry. So to clarify, the drop clock is not going to drop students out of classes with the NC designation.
So no. So if you're, do we mean no cost? Because it's really about the payment deadline process is for the classes that you're registering for now. So if you're registering for a class at this time, it would really be just classes that you've withdrawn or received an ADW on or after March 16th for, that would be a part of the no cost. Once final grades post for the spring semester, then those additional classes, if they're re-registered for, would not be counted for against your tuition charges.
So Laura, I think what they're trying to, and just to clarify, I think what they're trying to say, if a student took only the courses that they NC'd, so you know,
Yes.
say they, you know, chose the NC designation and they only want to take those courses. And since the school's covering and the financial aid wouldn't give anything for that, would those students be dropped from those courses?
No, they would not. But I would like to just make sure that the timeline is clear on that, because a grade has to have been earned first unless the class was dropped. So really those classes you couldn't re-register for them until that final grade has been posted. So that would be that May 18th time. And let's say you register on May 19th for all of the same classes again, and they all qualify for the no cost retake, then you don't have to set up a payment plan. There's nothing additional needs to be done, and the payment deadline process will be in place, and you'll get that service indicator that you can see in your portal to show that your payment basically has been confirmed.
Okay. And just for clarity for students, if you're wanting to set up an advising appointment, you can do so at ccc.gradesfirst.com, or you can go through the portal to set up a Grades First appointment, and the advisors are conducting those appointments. Some campuses all via Zoom, some are using like Google Voice as appointment. So that's where you would go to set up your appointment. Okay, just want to make sure.
And you can, and to add to that, Stephanie, too, if you just go to any CCC website or just www.ccc.edu, on the bottom of it, you'll see every page, really, you'll see virtual student services. You can also go there, or go to like your my.ccc.edu portal as well to set up an appointment through Grades First. So there's quite a few different ways. I saw a question popped up for me regarding that, but you can absolutely, you'll always see that virtual student services at the bottom of the page when you log in, or when you just go to our website.
And know that there are some, if some campuses might not have currently, like let's say a campus doesn't have an appointment opening, then please visit the virtual walk-in, which you can access at prepare.ccc.edu /V as in Victor SS. You know, Megan, if you can put that link into the chat for everyone. So if you have any concerns about how you can connect with an advisor, you can use the virtual walk-in space, and then that particular college will be able to direct you accordingly as well. Okay. Sorry, Laura, just making sure I didn't miss anybody.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
I believe Oh, this is a good question. Can students who opt into the no credit opt out of it? In other words, can they change their mind?
So you can make the changes up until May 9th, but once that's happened, it is locked in. So that is a really great question. And you won't be able to change after that date or after a final grade has been posted. So if you save it today and say, yes, I want it, and then rethink it, and tomorrow go back in and make a change to one or all of your classes, you can do that. We're not locking it until after May 9th, then you wouldn't be able to make a change again.
Okay, I don't see any additional questions at this time.
Okay. Yeah, and I think we are just a little past the time. So thank you all for joining. And just as a reminder, we are recording this session, so it'll be posted on the ccc.edu/coronavirus site. And again, thank you again for all of your great questions. And if you have questions, please feel free to reach out. Okay. All right, everyone, have a great day.